since it's Thanksgiving and many of us are venturing forth, I hope that you all have something wonderful planned in your week ahead for those who celebrate Thanksgiving. I will never forget, by the way, being in Israel with my beloved parents of blessed memory, and my mother took it upon herself to decide she was going to host a Thanksgiving dinner for all of the expats working for JDC who lived in Israel. And my mother, being who she was, marched herself into the chef of the King David Hotel, into the kitchen, and she said, okay, we're making Thanksgiving. Here are some recipes you're going to follow. So I'm going to say there were maybe 50 members of the JDC family that were there that year. And she had come from the United States with all the little chocolate turkeys and all the little decorations and so forth, but making sure that the Thanksgiving was appropriately observed. Now, I'm not sure that the chef at the King David Hotel ever quite got over meeting my mother, but a lot of people had that reaction too. And it was all mostly good stuff that came out of that. In any event, Thanksgiving, a time for gratitude. This is certainly where we are now. And where I am thrilled to kick this off is just thinking about the work that we do in Africa, Asia, and why I love this job, because so much of what happens in this region is just a microcosm of the work that we do everywhere. Small scatterings, smatterings of Jewish population, but with great needs and great history. And the feeling that wherever a Jew needs us, JDC is there, comes to mind absolutely when we think about the Africa-Asia region. So I will tell you that one of the first things that I learned about JDC back in the dark ages when I was on the Young Leadership Cabinet and first was being exposed to Jews in other places was in fact that there were Jews in India and there were Jews in Tunisia and there were Jews in these remote parts of the world that I never dreamed of. And when I think of India today, as I imagine many of you do, it's the sights, it's the smells, it's the spices, it's the colors, it's the exoticism of this region of the world, and the idea that there is a rich Jewish history there is just continues to amaze me. So we decided that today we would focus on India as one of our key locations in Asia, Africa. And I'm just thrilled that we have 3 of our talented professionals from the region joining us today. We're going to start with an overview, and you'll see this in the chat if you're looking for the agenda, on what's going on in the region and so forth, and then come back a little more specifically to India. But we have Nissim Pingley, David Kumar, and Sharon Samuel, who are going to give us an insider's view, but each from a different point of view of what's going on with the Jewish community in India. So we're going to get started with an overview before we get onto the magic of life in India. And I'd like to start by handing it over to my friend and colleague, Russell Walkend, who is the interim director of the region, as well as a few other regions, since nobody does just one job these days, to just bring us up to date on what's going on in the region as a whole.
Thank you, Betsy, and it's great to see everybody. I apologize for being very yellow. The lights in this particular hotel, there's some things that we can't control, but I am healthy and I am good. I'm not normally this color. So I wanted just to open up with a few thoughts before we really get to hear from my amazing colleagues and our professionals out in the field in India. Betsy has taught us to be clear in our messages, and we have coined over the years a phrase which I think suits both the Jewish community in India, many of the communities we work with, if not all of them, in our region, potentially even this Zoom, but definitely the work of Africa Asia, which is small but mighty. The Jewish communities may not be large, the Jewish communities may not be big in number, but they are mighty. They are a big part of what makes us such a diverse Jewish people. They are a big part of the reach and scope of the Jewish people throughout the world, and really a big part of JDC. I think they, the communities we have the privilege of working with in Africa, Asia, just highlight over and over again how important our work is. And not because of who they are, but because of also who we are. Or not only because of who they are, because of who we are. Because we understand that we have a role to connect Jewish communities, to be there for Jewish communities, and to have access to Jewish communities wherever they be. And we work on that mission every single day. The other thing I wanted to say is, and I think this is especially true of all our communities, but potentially also especially Africa, Asia, JDC is a very, very smart, I think, organization with a very clear mission, which knows how to be a global organization, but work locally. We are able to feel like a global organization, and yet when we're in India, we can feel like a local Indian organization. And when we're in Morocco, we can feel like a Moroccan organization. We understand that our commitment to the local culture, to the local leadership, to the local dynamics, traditions of any place where we work is part of our success. And we work with respect for that, with an understanding of that, with an effort to always understand it better, and to work wherever possible alongside with locals. We have just had the most inspiring 2 or 3 days. We're all in Budapest at the moment, because since March 2020, we have not, as a team of professionals, been together. And the power of the room, and I really use that word intentionally, the power of the room, of sitting with all of our team for JDC that work in Europe and all of the team that work with Africa, Asia, and some of us do both, was inspiring. It was not only just a family coming together, but it was the collection and the integration of each and every one of us, mission-driven, passionate people that love the work we do and love the mission of the organization. And then today we get to join you as our supporters and board members, and we'll get to see some in December as well. We are a team, and it is just, we're all on a real high at the moment. I think you can probably see the smiles on my face and others. We are inspired and ready and motivated and just filled with this drive to go out and continue to do what we do, but to do more and more. But I want to hear from the people that are really in India and doing the work. So I'm going to stop talking now. Obviously, we can take some questions later. But Betsy, I'm going to hand it back to you. I just wanted to share those words at the beginning.
I very much appreciate that, Russell. And I can see the smile on your face. And I can imagine for all of you, it's very energizing to be together in person and feed off each other's excitement. And I wish you continued wonderful meetings there. I know you'll still be on cloud 10 by the time we see you in New York in just a few weeks. So great. Okay, so we have another of our wonderful professionals, Amos Levy, who doesn't have just one hat. He is JDC's Director of Planning for Europe, Africa, and Asia, because one job is not enough for anybody at JDC, clearly. So we're going to have Amos frame this next part of our program, which will bring us a closer look at the history as well as the current situation in India. Amos?
Thank you, Betsy. And thank you all for joining. Really excited to be here with you today and to see many of you just in a few weeks in New York. You know, India is a country that captures the imagination. I'm sure many people on this call have visited. The experience being a member of a small and really quite old Jewish community in a country of over 1 billion people is difficult, I think, for a lot of us to fathom. And that's really why we chose to highlight our work in India today. I'm pleased to introduce to you Nisim Pingali, who serves as the director of the Evelyn Peters JCC in Mumbai. I am sure that some of you remember Evelyn Peters. We have asked Nisim to share a bit about the history and the makeup of the Indian Jewish community, and to speak about his work at the JCC. After Nisim presents, we're going to be hearing from David Kumar, who directs our welfare operations. And then finally, we'll be listening to Sharon Samuel, who will speak about his work as the youth program manager in Mumbai. We ask that if you have questions, you submit them in the chat. We'll make sure that there is going to be opportunity for Nisim, David, and Sharon to answer your questions. And we will make sure also that their bios will be put in the chat towards the end of the event so that you can read a little bit more about them. Without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to Nisim. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Amos. Shalom, everybody, and I'm excited to see you all. My name is Nisim Joshua Pingle, and I'm the director of the Evelyn Peters Jewish Community Center. And I would like to take the next few minutes to share about myself, what my role is, a little bit about the Jewish communities in India, and how my work changed due to the COVID during the pandemic, and the things that I'm proud of about the JDC and the JCC. Okay, so I was born and bred in Mumbai. Proud to be a Jew, a very proud Indian, and I belong to the Bene Israeli community. I'll come to that in a bit. And at the JDC, I look at the day-to-day operations of the Evelyn Peters Jewish Community Center. We do programs for all the age groups. There are these weekly and monthly classes and programs around the Jewish calendar. Our programs are all the events and classes and the various programs are social, educational, religious, motivational, recreational, and these are for people from all the backgrounds. If you feel Jewish, you are welcome to the JCC. And anybody, we don't do any sort of discrimination, try to be as inclusive as possible, and welcome everybody from all the communities. Now, coming to these different groups, different communities, there are three main Jewish communities in India, each of a different origin and with different cultural characteristics and traditions. So the Kochinis, the Bnei Israel, and the Baghdadis. And estimates are that there are a little less than 5,000 Jews today. And most of the Jews are Bnei Israeli, and most of the Jews live in and around Mumbai. So that gives you a little bit about where these communities are located. The Kochini Jews are the oldest group of Jews in India. They came about 2,200 years ago with roots that are claimed to date back to the times of King Solomon. The next to arrive are the Bene Israelis. And the local legend suggests that the Bene Israelis arrived between 1800 and 2000 years back, and they were shipwrecked at the Konkan coast. And as per the legend, only 14 of them survived, and they took refuge in the village called Naugao, which is close to Bombay, now Mumbai. And the third were the Baghdadi Jews. They were the latest ones to arrive in the 18th century. And while we say Baghdadi, they were from Syria, Aden, Yemen, and Iraq, and I mean Iran, all these places. And they came via the Silk Route, primarily to trade. And they came and landed in Bengal, in Calcutta. And we are a little less than 5,000, like I said, amongst 1.3, 1.4 billion Indians. And what is really interesting and quite unique is there was never any anti-Semitism from the local non-Jewish majority. And I'll tell you what illustrates that. There are about 120 major languages spoken in India, and I'm not even counting the dialects and the minor languages. That will take it to thousands. There are about 22 official languages in India. And not one of these Indian languages has a word in their dictionary for anti-Semitism. So that gives you an idea. Now coming to the JDC, JCC bid, the JDC is one of the very few organizations that cater to all the age groups with various backgrounds. And I would like to zoom in a little bit about the role that we played during the pandemic. Now, the Evelyn Peters Jewish Community Center stepped up to ensure that the community members are supported during this difficult time. And despite the uncertainty and following the closure of the JCC facilities, we wanted to maintain the Jewish spirit. And our services went completely virtual, and EPJCC continues to promote Jewish culture and heritage. We did it over Zoom during the pandemic, and today we do it hybrid. We have opened the JCC, but we still do it online on Zoom as well. And during the pandemic, we realized that the pandemic not only led to creating fear and stress, but also interpersonal conflicts and domestic violence. That is what we kept reading in the news. And the Jewish community is not different. And we realized that we had a role to play. So I'll tell you a little bit about the highlights of our virtual programs that we did. So we did virtual. I mean, the very first, when we went virtual, the first things that we did were these virtual visits to far off communities in India. And we got to people in these different communities so that they could talk about their communities. We did the Passover Seder. There were doctors from our community that led sessions on health, hygiene, and sanitation. We did a virtual limud. We led a high holiday seminar. There was an art of the living meditation. We even had a stand-up comedian, an Israeli-American artist, Benji Lovid, who did a stand-up comedy. And what was touching and inspiring is to see even 70 and 80-year-old members of the community adapt and acquire the knowledge about these new technologies and video conferencing services. And these online programs and other creative content not only offered volunteering opportunities, but also provided social connections for the isolated members of the community. It increased safety, and there were so many social benefits that came because of the programs that we could do. And yeah, most certainly all of this would not have been possible and as effective without the participation of the community members, the volunteers, partnerships with other organizations, the rest of the JDC staff, and of course a big toda rabba to the board and the generous donors. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank for being with us on this journey, and request you to continue engaging with us. And like they say, our proudest moments in life are when we come together. So thanks to the remarkable people like you, and that makes me proud that we could meet these challenges and continue to provide care with inclusion and respect and excellence. So yeah, that's from my side, and I'll wait to take questions towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisim. Really inspiring to hear from you, and frankly to be your colleague. Just really proud of what you're doing and how you bring so many people together, particularly under difficult times. Now I'd love to hand it over to David, who's going to talk to us about the incredibly holy work that he's doing of helping to care for really some of the poorest Jews on the face of the earth. David, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Amos. And first of all, I would like to appreciate and thank you for making the time to listen to us and for all the good work that you have been doing. I would start with myself and speak about the Indian context and what JDC does in India and wind up with the challenges. Basically, I did my MSW, Masters in Social Work in Mumbai, and I worked 6 years for the church community in Goa and 2 years for a slum community, which is the second largest in India, first being Dharavi in Mumbai. So there I had a chance to learn, interact, work for the people from different denominations, be it Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and that helped me to grow. And ultimately in 2015, I joined JDC, and this is my 8th year doing welfare. Coming to the Indian context, as you all know, it's 1.3 billion and counting. The population is huge. And we have a diverse culture, diverse economic policies going on. And in India, we have 29 states, and the government does welfare in two formats. One is the central government manages few projects, and the contextually the state, each state, for example, Maharashtra, where Mumbai is, where majority of the Jews reside. So we have different states having different welfare programs. And in general, in theory, we are a welfare state. The government does a lot for the Indian people. But at the same time, in the context, the real context, due to the overpopulation, minimal resources, the government can't handle this. So eventually the interest groups, the NGOs, the help from abroad. So these are the way we get help for the people in India. Coming to the Jewish community, we are a small community. And here, the context, we have different people. Basically, the main families, the Jewish families are composed of, especially the poorest section. Mostly there are intermarriages, mixed marriages, people coming from the first generation learners. So majority of the welfare clients currently we have children who are the first ones to go to school. And JDC for the past 63 years have been carrying its work here in India. And I'm very proud to be part of this organization. And we do few projects, major being an old age home, medical support, education, cash support, counseling, therapies, and housing rehabilitations. So through this, we have so far come to a level post the growth, the grassroots growth. So we are now focusing more on community integration, more on social integration. So we have Jewish families, individuals who have been given enough support in the past 63 years. And today we have children who have got education, who are coming from good colleges. And most of them, majority, I would say in the past 7 years, I've seen at least 13 to 14 families doing Alia. And coming to the next part, challenges. So we can't force people to make choices in social work. So eventually, the old, the elderly, they prefer staying in India. So most of our programs are focused on the elderly due to language issues, due to the attachment with the neighbors. So we Indians are more emotional, more religious, and we want to be with the people. So most of the Jewish families, the elderly, prefer staying, living in India. And most of the JDC programs are focused towards them. And in our efforts to get them out of the poverty cycle, we do a lot of programs. Every month. We have medical camps. We have old age home. During COVID, we had consultants from Israel. Our country director, Moni, he really helped us with a lot of volunteers, a lot of professionals, doctors who came on virtual platforms, who guided us, who guided our crisis team. We had a team. And in the old age home, we lost around 5 due to COVID and 2 due to cardiac arrests. So we had a lot of support from all over the world, even from the grid and from Israel. We had ventilators being sponsored, the oxygen concentrators, and many synagogues, around 21 places in India, the Jewish places were given these concentrators, sponsored, so that the community members get the help from them. And we as a team, Nissim and Sharon, Ashley, Sinora, we as a team work towards it. And lastly, coming to the second challenge after social integration is self-reliance. So children, the families, the elderly, they all it is their personal decision, but eventually we, through counseling, psychotherapies, we try to guide them. And mostly it is a challenge because the elderly, they have different reasons to stay back. And I'm not saying they need to do alia to have a better life, but their happiness depends on the context they have grown through the ages. And I would like to wind up with, in India, we have NGOs and interest groups who do work for a lot of different communities. But JDC currently focuses on the Jewish families here. And as I said, out of almost 1.3 billion people, there are NGOs who are doing different work for different age groups, different denominations, demographies. But we do not have a single old age home managed for the Jewish individuals in India, especially the Shabbat experience, the prayers, our own way of culture. So that we do not get in other old age homes. So we try to sustain that program. And JDC is playing a major role in that. And to wind up, lastly, I would talk a little bit about the welfare in general. In India, they focus on karma, the principle, the ethical principle, where they say our present life is based on the past acts, the past karmic energies. In simple words, if we have done good work in the past life, through our incarnation in the next life, we bear the fruits. So if you have done bad, if you have not done good mitzvah, so that is what carries on. And here it has two double-edged dimensions. The rich, the well-to-do, implied to help the social welfare. And out of choice, free will, altruistic behavior doesn't crop up, especially in the Indian context where there is a lot of corruption, there is a lot of other reasons why the support doesn't reach to the really worthy individuals. And secondly, if you are born in a poor family, if you're born wretched, if you're born disabled, so there is a interpretation of karma. They say this person must have done bad deeds in the past, that is why he's born that way. So this challenge of breaking the shackle of the spiritual side, the thing that we can't explain in simple words. So this is a major challenge for us to convince, to educate the people to come towards social causes and contribute.
David,
and here I'm really proud to be.
David, can you share with us a story? I know that you have a story of a particular person that we've been able to help.
Yes. So we have a story, success story, and this story is like with us 15 years back in the year around 2006. There was a flood in Mumbai, and this lady, she was a Jewish lady. Her husband was a Jew, and she's a Hindu lady. We found her on a public toilet. So she was residing there. She had Yes. So she was residing in a public toilet because her house was flown in the water. And JDC professionals those days, they found her, she lost all her documents. And this is Seema Aptekar and her son Asher Aptekar. So we rehabilitated them. Today they live in a house in Mumbai itself. And it was a big challenge for them to get back their passport. I remember making rounds to the passport department. And in fact, her daughter, one of the daughter married a Jewish guy in Israel, and she's moved there and she wants her mother to be there. But she had a lot of problem with the documentation work. So JDC, through a lot of other stakeholders, we try to get the passport done for her. And now she's with her son and she wants to be with the son. As I said, she's emotional. She wants that neighbors, to talk to the neighbors, to talk her language, to be connected to her family. And she's converted to Judaism, but she lives a fully Jewish life in India.
David, thank you so much for sharing the important work that you do, the really critical work that you do. Nothing short of saving lives. I'd love to hand it over to Sharon. Sharon is our youth manager, and Sharon, please take it away.
Thank you, Amos. Hi, everyone. Shalom, namaste. I'm Sharon Samuel. I'm from Bombay. I've been raised in Bombay. And I'm working as a youth program manager at the JDC. Firstly, I've been involved in the JDC even before I started working at the JDC. So, in supporting and planning all the youth activities, I've always worked as a volunteer. And as Nishim mentioned, that the number of Jews is going down. So my role is to make sure that we keep on conducting these activities on regular terms in Mumbai, to make sure that I'm giving the Jewish youth a Jewish life, because there are a lot of secular things happening, and there are a lot of less things that can offer than the Jewish context, in terms of religion, or just a Jewish community, or just to spend time with their Jewish friends. We also have a youth group, which is by the JDC. It's called the Jewish Youth Pioneer, youth and young adults from the community. And I, along with this committee, get together to plan camps or sessions, leadership activities or workshops, so that we can just give them a Jewish life. Okay. One of the major things that we do with the JYP is that we have something called as Kai Fest. So Kai Fest is a annual fundraiser which happens usually during Hanukkah. I also have a video for you which we will play at the end of it, but I'll just say right now. Kai Fest is like an annual fundraiser where we raise money. It is done by the youth, for the community in general of Mumbai. And there are people performing, showcasing their talents, people from all ages, right from kids to people who are 70 and 80 years old. So it's a huge variety that we're offering on stage. And I would say that this is the only cultural Jewish event that happens right now currently in India. So it's a very proud moment for me. And the money that we raise from this event, we use it for our old age home, the Jewish old age home Baiti, and the half of it goes to the Jewish activities, the youth activities that we conduct throughout the year. So even this year we have Kai Fest, which is happening on 22nd of December. I invite you all to come for it. If you're not able to come to India, we will definitely be sharing a Zoom link with you guys, so you can just come and be a part of it, and it'll be lovely to have you all. Firstly, I'm very proud to be part of JDC, because being Jewish is preserving our history and making sure that our history in India is preserved and said, and we need to educate more people about being Jewish. So it gives me a great honor to be with JDC and working towards the betterment of the Jewish youth all together in India. I'll just ask Rachel to please share a video of Kai Fest. Thank you, Rachel. कोई मारे ना यहाँ अपनी भी थोड़ी अदा थोड़ा अंदाज है ऐसे हैं चाहे वैसे हैं अरे जो भी हैं जैसे हैं खुद पे हमें नाज है जाने ना हमको ये जमाना चाहो तो हमको आजमाना हम इश्क बाज दिल वाले कहते हैं हमको प्यार से इंडिया वाले छू लेते दिल के तार से इंडिया वाले हर चीज छीन ले हार से इंडिया वाले दुश्मन के छक्के छुड़ा दे हम इंडिया वाले दुश्मन के छक्के छुड़ा दे हम इंडिया वाले.
Thank you, Sharon. Now, if anyone has any questions, we're happy to take them. The easiest way is to put them in the chat, and we can make sure that that David, Nikim, and Sharon can
Thank you
answer
so much. Thank you.
we have.
The chat seems to be disabled. I don't know if it's just my computer, but it says the chat is disabled.
Mine too.
Oh, looks like it just got enabled. Thank you, whoever magician did.
Thanks. Well, I'll kick off the questions while people are formulating some of their own, because I know there are a number of things that come to mind as you're watching this. I mean, first of all, the idea that in a population of well over 1 billion people, we have just under 5,000 Jews in itself was just a remarkable thought. And the fact that this is the accidental Jewish community of India, a shipwreck 2,000 years ago, created the beginnings of this community. It's really quite extraordinary. And the resilience that has been shown through these centuries is really quite extraordinary. One of the things that, actually there are two questions that I'd like to ask. One has to do with Jewish poverty in India. You know, we know, those of us who are aware of great disparities in various countries, we know that the very wealthy and the very poor in India are as one of the most striking and distressing things. In what way, if any, is the Jewish poverty different from poverty in the rest of the country, which we know to be quite an extensive problem? That's my first question. And
David,
I guess, David,
David, is that
David,
something that you
would be
can
please.
answer?
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Betsy. The poverty line in India, it was formulated by the Tendulkar's committee. So they say any individual or family earning less than $2 per day. And again, this depends on the urban and the rural areas. In the rural areas, even people who earn less than $1, they are considered to be poor. And in urban areas, anyone who's managing his life or her life with $2 and less, they're considered to be poor. And this is in fact just a material aspect. But there are other indicators about social life, about medical, about education. So in this manner, there are other factors also that add up to this measuring poverty line. So basically, anyone earning less than $2, they fall. So even we in JDC, we keep this criteria. Any families who earn less than $2 or have other support, means a lack of other support, social support, medical, we do consider that when we choose our clients.
Okay.
Thank you.
Amos, I'm going to ask the second question before we turn what's in the chat, because there's some great ones there too. There was I love the idea that there's no word for anti-Semitism in all of the vocabulary of the Indian dialects and so forth. However, there was a very serious terrorist incident that involved the Chabad some years ago. I'm wondering if you could remind us of what that story was and what impact it has had on the community since then.
Nisim, can I ask you to answer that?
Yes. First of all, thank you for the question. And yes, there were in 2008, there were these 10 Pakistani terrorists that came, and they came close to Mumbai, and they attacked different locations. And one of the places to be attacked was the Chabad house. And though I'm not a big fan of that narrative where it says these terrorists were from outside, I'm just saying it for the sake of mentioning that there is no homegrown terror, or these terrorists were not from India. Having said that, I do want to acknowledge that they did attack the Jewish Chabad house. And since then, the community has become a little more alert. We are coordinating and working closely with the police in India, and they have been very good. The police in India has been very proactive whenever we need them for during the high holidays or the Hanukkah lighting that takes place at the Gateway of India. They're always there. But yes, the community is a little more alert, and they don't take things for granted. But having said that, people will still tell you that they are proud Indians, and not really worried to tell people that they are Jews. In fact, a lot of people take pride in letting people know there are Jews, especially with this current government. They are very pro-Israel, always keep mentioning in their discussions how Israel is a great friend to India. So not much has changed, as I would say. Having said that, the community is a little more alert, generally speaking.
Thank you, Nisim. We've got some great questions in the chat also. There are a few of them that relate to demographics. Nisim, I'm going to ask you to answer this one as well, because I know that you and I actually spoke about it a bit this week.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the average age of the community and what you think? Well, I'll put it this way: what was the size of the community 10 years ago, approximately, and what do you think it will be looking like 10 years from now?
Right. First, the Indian population is like it's a pyramid where there are lots of young people in India. When you compare that to the Indian Jewish community, it's like almost like an inverted pyramid where there are elderly, it is an aging population, and it is a little bit of a challenge. While the community has maintained this critical mass, there are these small numbers of aliyah, some intermarriages, um, not too many marriages taking place in the community. So though these numbers are small, I mean the aliyah and the intermarriages, our community is so small that it does make a difference. And if you ask the elderly in the community, they are worried that the community is not growing. So these certainly are challenges, but we try our best to provide people resources and do events in such a way that that the identity, the Jewish identity of the community members, especially the youngsters, is strong, and we provide them as many resources and platforms to explore their Jewish identity. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Nisim. Can you talk a little bit about the education? Is there a Jewish school in India? One of the people, Nancy, wrote about a girls' school.
I was there, I'm sorry, I was there right after the bombing. There was a small group that went to support the community, and we visited the synagogue where the rabbi was working, and we, toured all around. We stayed in the hotel that was bombed, and I was with Jane Weitzman, and I was with the Weinberg Foundation, some Weinberg Foundation people. So that's why I visited the girls' school that Jane had, supported, and we visited some elderly people on a floor that Weinberg was. I was wondering if it was still all around. I also just want to say that the Indian government took over all of the non-used, the older synagogues, and keep them in immaculate condition. And that was astounding to me. Thought that was wonderful.
Right. Thank you for your question, Nancy. I read it. I'll talk about the old age home. The aged home, it is still functional, and that's what David takes care of. It's called the Baiti, and you're right, it was supported by the Weinberg Foundation. It is very much in existence. Coming to these Jewish schools that you mentioned, we have all these Jewish schools. There are 3 in Mumbai. There are a few in Gujarat, and also in the east, in Calcutta. And though these Jewish schools are there in existence, and also these the boards of these Jewish schools are run, there are Jews on these board, but there are very few Jewish students going to these schools. And I'll try and explain why it is such. For example, the 3 Jewish schools in Mumbai, they are in South Mumbai, where there was a Jewish presence, and there were lots of Jews and Jewish families staying in South Mumbai. That's where there was lots of synagogues, and that's where there were these schools. What happened over these past 20, 30 years is the Jews started going up north and in the suburbs of Mumbai, primarily because of the high real estate prices. So when couples got married, and if they had to buy an apartment or even rent an apartment, it was not South Mumbai. So it was in the suburbs up north. And it is a challenge to send these young students all the way to South Mumbai, and transportation in Mumbai is very difficult with the traffic, and that is why people did not send their children to these Jewish schools. So that is one of the reasons there are these schools today, but not too many Jewish students in these schools. And what you mentioned is,
I'm sorry, this was just a school for girls.
say that
It was,
again.
It was just a school for girls, young girls. It wasn't a
Okay.
Jewish school.
Okay. So the school for girls is, I think the one that you're mentioning is from Calcutta. And the synagogues that you mentioned, there were lots of synagogues also in Cochin, and you're right, the government is doing an excellent job by taking care of those, and some of them are museums. I know a couple of them get functional when there are tourists, and the Chabad rabbi sometimes goes and prays there during the high holidays. But yes, the Cochin synagogues are very well maintained by the government.
Thank you, Nisim. We have a few other questions that unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to today, but we're happy to send you answers to those questions as a follow-up to this event. What we'd like to be able to do is show you a short video. There was an Entwine trip that took a group of young adults from North America, young Jewish adults, to India, and Entwine is our platform for young adult engagement around global Jewish responsibility. And as we're talking about bridging gaps and shortening distances between us, we find that a trip to India can be an amazing tool to do just that for young Jewish adults in North America. Enjoy the video.
If you would have asked me about probably 6 months ago, is there a Jewish community in India? I probably would have been like, no. Tune in 6 months later. I'm in a suburb of Mumbai at a camp with a ton of Jewish peers that have grown up with the same observance level, with the same knowledge level, in a Jewish home, just as me. And I'm, just like them, participating in an afternoon mincha service. They're reading the Sefer Torah, and I get called up for an aliyah. I had no idea that 6 months ago that there was even a Jewish life, and here I am, interacting with all these Jewish peers, learning about their Jewish history.
We have come to a camp where we have the Indian Jews and the American Jews who come together to be together, to know each other's culture, because there are different types of Jews, and we want to know, because it's a small community, and we want to know what are the different people and what are their traditions, culture, and all of that. So here we are together, and we are here because of an organization called JDC, and the camp is in the name of JYP, that is the Jewish Youth Pioneers.
Definitely the coolest part about being on this trip is seeing the overlap of my Jewish values with those of our Indian peers. I guess I've taken it for granted that I just grew up in such a tight-knit Jewish community, and to know that there are people who have some semblance of that on the other side of the world is just incredible.
JYP was an organization which was formed around 20 years ago by the Jewish youth of India. And the reason why it was formed was as many people are migrating to Israel and America, the community is becoming smaller, and that's when this idea came up by the youth of the Jewish India that we should form an organization. Being a Jew in India is really unique, I would say, because there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of culture in India, and then you have a Jewish culture coming up in India. And it's like we always have this two life, a Jewish life and the normal life which we live. So at times it's difficult. Of course, it's really difficult, to have Jewish people, to see Jewish people, and to be with Jewish people. But then it's beautiful. It's beautiful to be a Jew in India because at the same time we are really safe over here. And India is really pro-Israel, I would say. And it's really good to live here. It's really safe and beautiful.
Betsy, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Before I close, I want to offer a minute to our President Mark, who wanted to say a few things about India.
Not really about India, but about a few other subjects. I would like to say, as we approach Thanksgiving in the United States, one of the things I'll give thanks for is our wonderful professionals in India and throughout Africa, Asia. When we were younger, people might remember Mighty Mouse, as you said, small but mighty, but he came to save the day. And we have done that in our own way with JDC, and I'm proud of it. There are some people, Alan Rothenberg was with me in Tunisia, and right before the Arab Spring, Karen Moss, I remember her being there too, but maybe it was in Istanbul. But this is a fascinating region, and Betsy, we thank you for the strong chairmanship that you gave to this committee, the leadership, the chairpersonship, let me get that right, the great leadership that you gave this committee. And Terry has large shoes to fill, but I know she will, and I want to thank you. I also want to note that you have a lot of support here on the board today. I see Marav, and the European chairman, and Nancy Hackerman, the next European chairman, on here, who said that her trip to India was the best trip she ever took with JDC. Well, I'm looking forward to Nancy taking us on a great trip to Europe. Gary Adickman is on this call, chairman of the FSU. Annie Sandler, who is so ably been chairman and longtime JDC board member and chaired Israel. And I remember also March of 2020 at the retreat that was held in Tel Aviv. It was the first event I went to as president of JDC. And Russell, you're absolutely right. The enthusiasm, I'm jealous that I'm not with all of you guys in Budapest today, because it was such a wonderful, wonderful time to visit you in Israel in March of 2020. So I think that's about it. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say, but I wanted to make sure I got those all in. Thank you, Betsy, for giving me a minute or two.
Oh, my pleasure, Mark. Let me just wrap up with a quick summary. It sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? A small, shrinking population, an aging population, a population that's got terrible poverty problems, a population that is thinking and worrying about youth engagement and the future, and the isolation that they are dealing with day by day in such a large geographic spread. But also, of course, a community that's got energy and resilience and a thirst to connect to Jews around the world. And that's what we do at JDC, is we help to provide that connection. And I'm very, very grateful to Sharon, to Nissim, and to David for your insider's peek of life in India today. I hope that you'll have some of us visiting you really soon. We continue and wish you continued success in building and sustaining this small but wonderful Jewish community. Happy Thanksgiving to all. Look forward to seeing some of you in December in New York. And thank you again for your abiding interest in Asia and Africa.